It's a bleak outlook for the future of Italy's economy, what with most economists expecting little or no growth for the Eurozone's third largest economy this year. I'm joined on the line with Carlton Crabbe of AES International to discuss the Italian and Eurozone data releases today. Carlton, welcome. A lack of confidence in Italy's economy has been evident since the beginning of 2014, with a business confidence consistently lower than 100, thus showing low expectations. How did today's business confidence data release reflect your forecast?
Absolutely expected, really. You've got to see that Italy's back in recession just after the first 2 quarters of this year, so they're seeing a continued contraction in their economy. And just a sort of an aside, really, just a few weeks back, if you look at the Italian growth, that was negative. The markets fell, but then a few days later, and you've got the German GDP growth figures coming out, which were also negative, minus 0.2%, and the markets rose. So you've got sort of bad news is good news, as it were, and that reminds me of probably a couple of years ago in the US when we had sort of contradicting evidence. Sometimes the market would react well, and they treat it as good news, and sometimes it would react badly. So it's a very schizophrenic market at the moment.
Similarly, Eurozone business confidence data is also out today. This has shown a decrease to 0.17 in July of 2014 from 0.21 in June. Do you predict this negative trend is here to stay in light of the current struggling Eurozone economy?
Yes, we do. You would have definitely thought so as well. I mean, the negative trend is definitely going to be here to stay for some time. Just looking back to the middle of July, not really much has gone right in Europe. You've seen stock markets decline something in the region of 5%. I think really the reasons for that are you look towards the escalation of the tensions on the border with eastern Ukraine, and that's really led to some final sort of sanctions, particularly food sanctions being imposed by Russia. You've got the import food bans from most Western powers, but Russia suffered even more. That market's off around 10%. But looking forward, you expect now the central bank to undertake some sort of stimulus. You've got Draghi basically may feel that the German engine of growth, as it's always been known, is starting to slow down a little bit too much, especially with those last figures coming out. And then he'll have probably a real mandate amongst the people, and also, of course, the politicians. This is being driven by to undertake some proper and serious sort of quantitative easing before really the end of 2014 for us.
And finally, it is apparent that the cost of borrowing for Eurozone countries fell to record low levels yesterday, despite gloom over the economic outlook and crisis over economic policy in France. What do you see as the reason behind this?
Well, this is really interesting, but perhaps just when you pause to think about it for a little bit longer, it may not be such a surprise. If you look back really over the last 3 months or so, you had the Portuguese bank Espírito Santo. They have obviously, their share price has now gone to zero. You had a gradual deterioration of that, and so you basically got a Portuguese bank going bankrupt. It's wiped out all of the shareholders and the junior bondholders in the process of that. Now, if you look at that, and that's what's basically happening today. But if you'd rewind maybe 2-3 years ago, you would have some serious problems in the Eurozone. You also have the Greek issues and the banking sector there. But that's really been sort of contained. So I think there's really a credit to the ECB about that, because you look at their the bank bailout mechanism, and that seems to be functioning, and that stopped that contagion. So whilst it's been in the headlines, whilst it's been going horribly wrong, and effectively it is bankrupt, the contagion has been, if you like, encircled, and it hasn't got any further. In terms of other things, really, I suppose the real contrast now between the US economy and the fiscal policy that the States is running, and you could even say that really about the UK, because you compare that to what's been going on in the European Union. So the US and the UK are coming to the end of their quantitative easing programs. They're starting to wind down those. But Europe hasn't even started. I don't think it actually could be more contrasting than where we sit here today. So you look at the ECB, they obviously haven't taken any more action on interest rates when they last met, but it is pretty difficult to get refinancing rates below the already negative amount, so perhaps not surprisingly. But I think the ECB are probably unlikely to do anything before next month. But they do basically say they're standing, they're ready to act to compensate for the geopolitical risks, particularly obviously the one we talked about a few months ago in Ukraine and Russia. And I think maybe come September, maybe a little bit later, but probably come September, we may see the ECB start to act and some easing and quantitative easing coming through. And as I said, the most contrasting thing about that is that's completely polar opposite to what the US and the UK are currently doing.
Well, that's all we've time for. Thank you, Carlton, for all your comments. Continue to click back on the Dukascopy site when tomorrow I'll be discussing GDP data releases, so stay tuned.